A piece of a Sikha, an excerpt from a Farbrengen of Shvuos Tafshin Chafhei, 1965. And the beginning part of the Sikha we have learned on other times in connection with Shvuos, where he speaks about what the Frierdiker Rebbe says about Shvuos has to be Kabbalah Satoida Besimcha B'Pnimius. Here, the Rebbe is going to, based on what he explains earlier about why we have to have specifically on Shvuos to be Kabbalah Satoida B'Simcha B'Pnimius, based on the reasoning, from that we'll understand other aspects and other components of Shvuos and how each one of us have experienced it, whether we are cognizant of that or not. So we're going to go to the second paragraph in the bottom of the page where it starts Ois Chof. We first explained the idea of that it's prohibited to fast for a bad dream on the Yom Tov of Shvuos. The din is that on, let's say, if on a Shabbos or on another occasion, if in the olden times when dreams actually meant something, these days we don't give credence to the dreams, but in olden times when dreams meant something, so if a person had a bad dream, so to relieve himself from the pain of that bad dream, he was allowed to fast even on Shabbos. But on Shvuos, he may not do so. Why? So the Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch, Kidei laharis shenoyach u'mekubal Yisrael yom shenitnu b'Torah, because a person needs to show that it's pleasant and acceptable to the Yidden the day that the Torah was given, which is only expressed through eating and drinking and celebrating. And if you fast, chas v'sholom, it might look like you're not happy with the Torah. So, to explain this further, the Rebbe explains what is the idea of a dream according to the inner teachings of Chassidus. By first prefacing the general idea of a dream in the service of Hashem, of a person. To explain the Amar Chassidus on the Pasuk, when Hashem will return the captives of Tzion, or return the returnees of Tzion, we were like dreamers. The avoid that we do during the time of exile, it's similar to a dream. In a dream, two opposite things can come together. A person can dream that you're taking an elephant and you're putting it through the hole of a pin. What does that show? The similarity of this to the service of a Yid to his creator during the time of exile, during davening and Torah study. A person can have and be inspired with a total love and awe of Hashem in a perfect manner. After davening, there could be no indication that he had this love and awe of Hashem. After learning, could be no indication that he had this love and awe of Hashem, which is just like a dream, that a dream joins two opposites together. A person's living in a dream life. He has two opposites together. Here he's experiencing a love of Hashem, and here he's not acting in accordance with that love. And the Alter Rebbe explains, a person should not fall, you should not feel bad because of it. A person could say that the inspiration in davening is not a true inspiration that has to do with who he really is. Because if it would be really true, his love that he had for Hashem, his inspiration that he had during davening, so how is it possible that over a short duration of time he will become completely changed to the opposite, the total opposite of his entire being? So obviously he brings from this a proof, from the fact that after davening a person could fall into desires that are opposite of his love for Hashem. It must be that his love for Hashem is not true. So the Alter Rebbe explains, the Rebbe is quoting the Alter Rebbe, that really no, because that is the nature of a dream that we're in during the time of Golus. Since this is a result of the state and situation of the time of exile. That our signs we have not seen. In other words, we do not see the wonders and signs of Hashem. We do not know what's going on. Therefore, it's possible his gabrus halumas, that it could be the overpowering of the other side. Still in all, it's only a dream. That a dream joins two opposites together. Therefore, it's not a contradiction. That also is inspiration during davening, is a true inspiration. That's the comfort and consolation that we are told in the pasuk when Hashem returns the returnees of Tzion, or the captives of Tzion. We were like dreamers. The Lachura seemingly since referring to the time of the redemption. That's what we're talking about when Hashem returns us to Israel. So we're now talking not about the time of Golus. We're talking about the time of return. We're talking about the Geula. Why is it said and written in Torah as an everlasting directive? In the generations before the coming of Mashiach, that was a dream. Why is it important now, before Mashiach comes? All the way from the days of David HaMelech, when he wrote Tehillim, is it important to know that it's all a dream? For what reason? Because it matters also these days. To be able to deal with the Yetzer Hara. That one of his strategies is to effect that a person should feel hopeless and to feel depressed over his avodah. The opposite of the joy and the gladness of heart that has to be in the service of Hashem. So that is why we are told many years before the Geula that the Golus is a dream. So chas v'shalom, we shouldn't feel down. Chas v'shalom, it shouldn't interfere with our love of Hashem. The fact that we find that even though we have a love of it shouldn't interfere with our joy in the service of Hashem, because even though we find that sometimes we fall, it shouldn't depress us. It shouldn't interfere with our joy in Hashem. The Rebbe goes on to say in this third paragraph of Bechein, Inyan HaCholom, the idea of a dream. And therefore, the result of that, the fast that a person fasts because of a dream, it can be, you're allowed to fast for a bad dream in other Yom Tovim. Even in Shabbos, where it's even more stringent than other Yom Tovim in some degrees. It's not permitted to fast on the Yom Tov of Shvuos. Why? Because when it comes to the Yom Tov of Shvuos, there is no control of Klippa whatsoever. Klippa is at all removed from the picture. So there's no reason to fast over a negative dream, because this negative dream, this feeling of being in the throes of Klippa, you don't have to be worried about it at all. You don't even have to fast for that sake. Chaf Aleph, Yuvan Al Piman is Boil Elsif Aleph Ve'elach, Benegel Nuscha Bracha Shel Kvokis Moich Hamead Mur Kabal Satoyre V'Simcha Pnimis. This will be understood according to what we explained at the beginning of the Farbrengen concerning the specific language of the bracha that the Frierdiker Rebbe, my father-in-law, the Rebbe's father-in-law, used to say, that to receive the Torah with joy and internalized. That seemingly the question is, how is this different than any other Yom Tov? Though all matters of Yom Tovim and Shabbos, and not even Yom Tov and Shabbos, but all matters of Torah mitzvahs must be done with joy and must be done in an internalized fashion. So what's the difference that specifically when it comes to Shvuos, does the Frierdiker Rebbe say that this is what we're supposed to wish each other? Still in all, there's a primary difference between Shvuos and everything else that has to be done with joy. Throughout the year, the Chazal say, always a person should be engaged and involved in doing Torah mitzvahs, even though it's not for the sake of Hashem, for some ulterior motive, meaning, a person should do Torah mitzvahs, even though at this moment that he's doing it, he might be lacking the joy that's supposed to accompany the Torah mitzvahs. He might be lacking that the Torah mitzvahs is not internalized. He's only doing it superficially. He's only doing it for some other reason. That is all possible by any other Yom Tov, by any other mitzvah. As opposed to the Yom Tov of Shvuos, that then it's renewed the idea of the giving of the Torah, because during Matan Torah we were being converted to Yiddishkeit, and the Frierdiker Rebbe explained, and the Rebbe explained earlier, just like a convert, before he converts, needs to demonstrate his full excitement and joy and passion, and how internalized he took upon himself the yoke of Torah mitzvahs. If he's not really interested, if he's doing it for some ulterior motive, he's not doing it with a true commitment and true joy, so then we don't accept him. So in a similar vein, since every single Shvuos we are reliving Matan Torah. Matan Torah happens anew, which Matan Torah was the idea of conversion. Therefore, every single Shvuos we have the idea of Simcha Pnimis. This has to be in a way of joy and internalized, specifically, like we spoke earlier in the Farbrengen at length, like the Rebbe spoke earlier. We skipped that part because we've learned it in previous years. This is the reason why we negate a fast for a bad dream, specifically on Shvuos, but we do not rule it out by other occasions. The Alter Rebbe used the expression that it's comfortable and accepted by the Yidden the day that the Torah was given. That is the entire novelty and the uniqueness of the Yom Tov of Shvuos. The time of Shvuos, the time of when we converted, that it has to be in a way of joy and internalized fashion specifically. Therefore, it's impossible, it doesn't make sense, it's not appropriate to be a state of a dream. Like we said, the dream allows for something the opposite of the joy and internalized fashion of the receiving of the Torah and conversion. So now the Rebbe is going to ask a very practical question. We know ourselves. We know that 2 days Yom Tov is a long time to maintain this type of situation. So the Rebbe says three paragraphs in the bottom, in the movement still it's not understood. During the 24-hour period of the Yom Tov of Shvuos, which is the original amount of time that we celebrate Shvuos, and they still do so in Eretz Yisrael. How much more so outside of Eretz Yisrael? That the Yom Tov is for a duration of 2 days. It could be many, many moments that we don't find ourselves in a state and situation of receiving the Torah in a joyful manner and an internalized fashion. So the Rebbe explains, following in Oischav Beis, we can explain this according to the words of the Alter Rebbe in the inner aspect of these matters. Skip the parentheses. The Alter Rebbe explains the reason why the Yom Tov of Shvuos is only 1 day Minat Torah. As opposed to Pesach and Sukkot, there are 7 days. We're going to skip the next paragraph. Actually, we're going to skip till the end of the brackets. Third paragraph on the next page. Alter Rebbe explains the reason why Shvuos is only one day. Because the Yom Tov of Shvuos is the Yom Tov of receiving the Torah. Shehu b'chinas haKeser, that corresponds to the sphere of Keser, or the level of Keser. Shehu b'chinas Yechida, it's the level of Yechida. Shalamayla mischalka zayin midas shnikroim zayin yom lamayla. It's beyond the division of the 7 attributes of the spheres of Chesed, Gvura, Teferes, which the 7 attributes, the 7 emotional attributes, the way they are above, are called 7 days. So therefore, Keser and Yechidam, which is higher than the 7 midas, are higher than 7 days. It's similar to the birth of a new moon, that it's like 1 point, 1 dot of light in the sky. So the Rebbe elaborates upon this. The idea behind this is what is the concept behind Pesach and the idea of Sukkot? It has individual specific mitzvahs. My mitzvah's Korban Pesach, there's the mitzvah of offering the Korban Pesach, mitzvah's chametz and matzah, the mitzvah of not eating chametz, the mitzvah of eating matzah. As opposed to the Yom Tov, and similarly in the Yom Tov of Sukkot, there's a mitzvah of eating in the Sukkah, there's a mitzvah of the Daled Minim, etc., etc. As opposed to the idea of the Yom Tov of Shvuos, which doesn't have one specific mitzvah. There's no specific mitzvah to the Yom Tov of Shvuos. Why? Because Shvuos is a general idea. Who klolus nesinas haTorah mitzvahs. It's the general idea of the giving of the Torah mitzvahs. Therefore, it's not limited to one particular mitzvah. And correspondingly, this also expresses itself in the amount of time that the Yom Tov is in. The Yom Tov of Pesach and the Yom Tov of Sukkot comes in the division of the details of time. It goes over 7 days because it involves details, so it comes over the entire details of time. As opposed to the Yom Tov of Shvuos, even when Shvuos comes down here below, it remains beyond the divisions of details of time. Nekuda achas, it's 1 point. And the Rebbe goes on to understand this, to analyze this further. How could it be 1 point? It's 24 hours or 48 hours. How could that be 1 point? So he says, Chav Gimel, Vadayin Tzarech L'Havim, we still need to understand, Harigam B'Yom Echad, even when you have 1 day, V'alachas Kam V'Kama B'Beis Yom Ki B'Chutz La'aretz, and how much more so when you have 2 days, like in Chutz La'aretz, Yesh Nahei Schalkas Azman L'Kama V'Kama Shoyes V'Regoyim. There's the division of time to many, many hours and moments. How can we say that the Yom Tov of Shvuos is a level of Yechida that's beyond division? It's 1 point. What do you mean it's 1 point? It's X amount of days, it's X amount of hours, it's X amount of minutes, and X amount of seconds. But the idea behind this is, according to what the Rogat Shavar explains, sometimes you could have a 1 point existence, but and that point expands over all the 24 hours of a day. Even after it expands over that entire period of time, it remains nisharis nekuda achas. It remains 1 point. Therefore, it's in such a way that it has the entirety of it. Skip the parentheses. This means to say, nekuda zu, the very point of the essence of Shvuos, it's essentially beyond the entire definition of time. It transcends time. That's the way the level that's beyond time shines within the levels and the definition of time. Therefore, even the way it's within time, it is a point that does not become divided and broken into parts. This is similar to something that the Rebbe speaks about a lot of times about the Mokim Ha'aron Eina Min Hamida, that the place of the Aron in the Beis Hamikdash does not occupy any space. On the one hand, you could measure the Aron, you can measure the Beis Hamikdash, but if you measured from one side of the Aron to one wall, you measured from one side of the Aron to the other wall, it wouldn't have taken up any space. So it's in space and beyond space. This is in a similar vein over here. It's one point that expands over the entire Shvuos. Let's skip the first paragraph in the next page, and let's go to the second paragraph. Similarly, it's concerning the 24 hours of the Yom Tov of Shvuos. Shehem nekuda achas. It's one point. Shezel lefisha bezman zen nimsheches umizgala nekuda she be'etzem lamayla megeder azman. That's because in this time it comes down and is revealed a point that is essentially beyond the category of time. Therefore, gam kifisha nimsheches b'toich zman, even the way it comes down into time. It remains in its pristine state that is beyond the entire category of division. In such a way that the entire continuation of this time is in a way that it's one point. That's also the general idea of Torah. The idea of Torah is the very essence of the pristine, non-adulterated aspect of Hashem's very essence that's beyond any category of division. But even though Torah and Hashem have the same pristine state, but the Torah it was given down here below in such a way that it's divided to multiple details and details of details. Even after it descends in this way of division, it remains one essence that's beyond the entire category of division, as we're soon going to explain an example of this by Matan Torah itself. This comes and emphasized during the giving of the Torah. Then the Torah was given the way it's above division. Rab Sadia Goin explains, and Rashi makes note of this in Chumash, that all the 613 mitzvahs are to be found hinted in the 10 dibris in the Aseres HaDibris. Furthermore, v'gam Aseres HaDibris atzvam namar b'dibur echad davke. It says that Hashem spoke all the 10 dibris as one. So we find not just the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah is all included in the point of the Aseres HaDibris, the entire point of Aseres HaDibris is included in one speech. Va'ad li'iskalus shakol Aseres HaDibris boisef aleph the Tevas Anoichi Kanal Siftas Vav, until the intermingling of and inclusion and subsuming of all the 10 dibros in the letter Aleph of the word Anoichi. The Rebbe brings down that Anoichi, earlier in the Farbrengen, that Anoichi, the Baal Shem Tov says, was koiling it the entire Aseres HaDibros. And then the Aleph of Anoichi, the Rebbe says, the Aleph includes the entire word Anoichi. So it comes out the first letter of the Aseres HaDibros includes the entire Torah, because the Aleph includes the Anoichi, which includes the Dibur Echad, which includes Aseres HaDibros, which includes the entire mitzvahs of the Torah. So what do we see over here? We see this one point that spreads out into everything. The duration of time, how much it takes to express and to pronounce the letter Aleph with its vowel, is like a moment. According to halacha, this is a measure of time, that there's nothing lower than this. Less than this, in other words, the most minimum amount of time, 1 point. That is the 1 point of the entire period of time of the 24 hours of the Yom Tov HaShvuos. It's the moment of the recital of the saying of the Aseres HaDibros. In that moment was given the Torah the ways beyond the vision. This point spreads out in all the 24 hours of the day. Just like the letter Aleph of Anoichi includes and expands within the entire 10 Dibros and all the 613 mitzvot of Torah. And the reason why the expansion of this Nekuda is throughout the 24 hours of the day, so he continues, Loi Pachas V'Loi Yoser, specifically, no less and no more. Who al pi divrei Gemara b'Mesachtas Nazir sheyom miskim hadadi k'dechsiv ayer vayvoki yom echad. It's according to the words of the Gemara in Mesachtas Nazir that every day is separated from each other. That's why it says right away at the beginning of creation there was evening, there was night, one day. Meaning that a day is an entire point. The way how Hashem created the world is that the order, that every 24-hour period is one entity, in the Kuda Achas, 1 point. Therefore, the point of Shvuos expands throughout the 24 hours, and in Chutz La'aretz, the 2 days of Shvuos. Now the Rebbe is going to lead it back to the question that we asked earlier. How do we have that the entire space of Shvuos should be B'Simcha B'Pnimius? So he says in Chav Daled B'Negel in Yanenu concerning the topic that we're concerned about, Hashem wants that the way we receive the Torah should be in a joyous manner and an internalized manner. It's impossible. It's impossible that there is not going to be at least one moment, in the literal sense of a moment, not just the moment that we're talking here that expands and so on, but a literal moment, that it's impossible that a Yid will not desire to truly have and want to fulfill Hashem's will with joy and with happiness. So if at one moment within the whole period of time of Shvuos he has it, so therefore, this moment is sufficient that he should have the point of the Yom Tov Shvuos. We say that the point of the Yom Tov Shvuos expands throughout the entire Yom Tov. So it should be Kabbalah Satoira B'Simcha Pnimi. So it should be the acceptance of the Torah in a joyous manner, in an inner manner, because he had one moment within the entire duration of Shvuos that way. The Kivin Shebachag Shvuos, yes, it's called Lechem Yisrael Kabbalah Satoira B'Simcha Pnimi, since by the Yom Tov Shvuos every single Yid has this acceptance of the Torah with joy in an internalized fashion. It's understood. It doesn't apply by him the idea that we were like dreamers of a melein therefore there's no place, no room for a fast, for a negative dream in the Yom Tov of Shvuos. Just like the point of the giving of the Torah expands within the entire definitions of time, within the 24 hours of the Yom Tov Shvuos. So too it permeates the entire being of a person to receive the Torah in a joyous fashion and an internalized fashion. Until his physical body rejoices with the acceptance and receiving of the Torah. that a Jew rejoices with it in it with food and drink laharis to show that it's comfortable and acceptable by the Yidden this very day that the Torah was given in.